Well, good morning. And happy Sunday. Who liked the fact that it was raining this morning? Come on, yeah. Well, you're here, you weather the storm. It's a good thing we're in Florida, because the people who are from the north are not having the weather we're having here. So we thank God for the rain, and we thank God for the lack of snow. Yes? This morning is a very special day in the life of our church, individually here in Miramar and collectively throughout the United States, and in fact the entire world. Before I move on, I do want to give recognition to some guests that we have today. One of the programs that I'm involved in is an exchange program that brings students from all over the world, most from the Orient. I like to say the Orient because it reminds me of the three wise men. And so put your hands together. We have several visitors who are here with us today, and our coordinator, Ms. Fern Mitchell, we want to say thank you for coming to visit us. We did see that one of our students had an episode this afternoon. We pray for her. We pray that she will be strengthened. We pray that whatever is ailing her will depart in the name of God, right? In the name of Jesus. So, we will continue to monitor her and make sure she's well. Because it's a very scary thing when you're halfway across the world and your parents are not here. And so we have to surround her and love her and make sure she's safe and that she returns safely to the comfort of her. So God bless you this morning. Thank you for coming. And we're going to talk a little bit about sanctity for human life today. This weekend is very special for many reasons. One of the good reasons for this weekend is tomorrow is no school. Amen. And tomorrow's no work. Well, Teacher Lewis. This weekend is also special because it's bookmarked by two very significant events. One took place on Friday, the March for Life in Washington, which has been in operation now for 43 years. The second event, right, so we had one on Friday, and the second event really is tomorrow. It's a celebration of the life and the work of the late Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr., and this will take place all over the United States. And I know from my country, Jamaica, we celebrate the works of Dr. Martin Luther King, who was our friend. He was a friend to our nation. The significance of Dr. Martin Luther King this weekend is not small. It's a great, marvelous, magnificent commemoration of the life and the works of this great man. Interestingly, though, 54 years ago, on August 28, 1963, and might I add, before I was born, during the Civil Rights March on the very steps of the Lincoln Memorial, where the marchers were this weekend, Dr. King gave his most famous, his most moving, and his most inspirational speech. You all have heard it. I have it. I find that it's not ironic that these two events took place in the very same spot. Because in essence, what Dr. Martin Luther King was fighting for was life, dignity, and the right of people to live and enjoy life. Dr. Martin Luther King was a man of vision, and he was a man of great faith. He was also a reverend. So we know that a lot of his strength and a lot of his revelations did come from a higher, supreme authority, and that is from God. You would agree, right, that our nation, our country here, America, is unquestionably one of the greatest that has ever been founded in the entire history of the world. Would you agree with me that that's a fact? Our Constitution was penned by a group of men commonly known as our founding fathers, and the U.S. Constitution is a solid blueprint for governance, which is unmatched. Even 243 years later, there is no constitution or anything like it across the world that's as solid as the one that we have here, because it encompasses so much. See, we here in America are indeed a nation built on strong pillars of morality and Christian values, and we are very proud of our country and the journey that we have gone through to get where we are today. But there was a time in our history where the repugnant actions of our forefathers caused shame and disgrace to cover us like a plague. I refer to the time from our early colonial days until about 1865, when men in British America were allowed to enslave and own blacks for forced labor. As we reflect on the atrocities of our past, one question often arises. How could a man, when they say a man, I'm talking collectively, be so wicked that he could treat another man with such indignity as to enslave him? This is something that I cannot fathom, and I would venture to say something you probably cannot fathom either. But we do know that when one man is able to lower another man to a level that's beneath his own, he has the capacity to become so cold that he can sidestep his conscience and not deal with the guilt of his immoral behavior. It's called sin, and we are familiar with this concept. We saw this in the events surrounding the rise of Hitler in the late 1930s, and how he categorically subjugated and demoralized the Jews in an effort to assuage his own conscience. This was also true of slavery in this country. During the era of slave ownership in America, black men and women were not allowed to vote. There was a time in our history that every woman was not allowed to vote. Black men and women were not afforded that right. But the politicians in the South wanted greater representation, which is based on the number of people who are counted during the census, right? Numbers matter. How many of you know what a census is? You just did one about a couple of months ago. And if you received the census packet in the mail and you didn't complete it, what happened? You got another one, you got another one, you got another one, and then someone came knocking on your door. Because filling out the census is very important for governance. And there are many reasons for that. That's how the government knows how many schools we have, how many post offices to put in a geographical region, how many paramedic stations to implant in a section of our community so that we have our service, how many hospitals. Censuses are very important. So the census that they were trying to complete is the same census that we do today. It's the same census that in the days of Mary and Joseph would marry a donkey and travel to Bethlehem to complete. Same census, it hasn't changed. True to the nature of man in his fall, during the census period, the writers of the Constitution found a way, a very convenient way, to compromise with the politicians who wanted to plump up their numbers. They massaged the language of the Constitution to suit their self-serving objective. Why would I say this? Because in those days, slaves could not be counted as a person. So if I'm a slave owner and I have 200 slaves, and I have a husband, right? Maybe 2 children, my household would be counted as 4 people, not 204. You see how this could create a problem? So in the conversation with the politicians, this is what they decided to do. Built into the Constitution was a clause that would allow slave owners to count their slaves, but really not count their slaves to give them rights that they should have been given. So although the slaves had no rights whatsoever, they had no right to vote, no right to get an education, no right to own property, no right to enjoy the basic dignities and inalienable rights of freedom, slave owners realized that they could still benefit from them by counting them as a part of their census. Now, what they did was they compromised. They made a decision that allowed these owners to maintain the status quo and count each slave as not a whole person, but 3/5 of a person's. I see the high schoolers saying, yes, I know about that, right? So this is how it worked. Take a look at this slide. Each black man would equate to 60% of each white man. So if we had 10 slaves, we could count them as 8, right? Make sense? To the politicians. Now, think about this. Throughout the South and in the North, there were free blacks. There were approximately 60,000 free blacks in those days. These men, because they were free, could be counted 1 to 1. So these 60,000 blacks didn't have to fall under the 3/5 rule, as it should have been everywhere. Now, it's important for us to know as we go through this period here and understand this, that the Constitution did not anywhere mention humans according to their race, their skin color, their ethnicity, or their value as a human being. The Constitution, the founding fathers were very careful in the way they wrote the narrative. Because they wanted to appease the men of the South, what they did was they straddled the fence. Pretty much like what politicians do today. So they didn't disparage slaves in the narrative of the Constitution, but they gave it to the South so that they could plump their numbers. In the expedience of promoting their own selfish agenda, these men used the social construct of that time and manipulated it to suit themselves. In other words, one man relegated another man, not fully 100% human, for the sake of ideology, ambition, and convenience. Although the law allowed practice then, it was still morally repugnant, and I would say disgraceful. The irony is that when the time came for a slave to be sold, it automatically became one person again, because then he could attract more money. So it's kind of funny how as people, we tend to not be 100% solid in what we believe. We change our opinions depending on how it suits us, and that's very interesting. We thank God for the brave men and women back in those days that were courageous enough to stand up and say, this is wrong. And it didn't matter what the color of their skin was, or their social standing was. We had Christian men and women who stood up and said, enough, this cannot happen anymore. We have to change this, we're better than this. Now, fast forward to 154 years later, today. What lessons have we learned from this horrible practice? Have we learned that this is not how we should treat people? Let's take a look at how we treat the unborn. Let's draw a parallel to how we vision the unborn today. See, as a people, we're not so evil that we would consciously say, okay, I'm going to take the life of my unborn child. We're not wired that way. Because we're made in the image of God, we don't have the heart that we would say, we're just going to snuff out the life of a baby. We can't do it. And so what we do is, all psychosis aside, we begin to think, okay, well, we can rationalize our decision by thinking a little bit differently. So we change the narrative a little bit. What if we use a different term to describe the unborn? What if we use what we call a euphemism? A euphemism is sort of like when someone dies, you don't say, oh, he's dead. We say, he kicked the bucket. Do you know that one? Or how about we say, he keeled over? Or in medical terms, he expired. Right? A euphemism is when we want to say something, but to take the sharp edge off, or to not be so blunt or vulgar or offensive, we say it a little bit differently. If we have a pet who's ailing, right? He's weak, he's old, he's like 102 years old, we have to help the pet to what? What do we do? We put them to sleep. We don't say we killed our pet, right? Because that would just be so painful. We put them to sleep. How about old people? Do we call old people old people? What do we call them? Senior citizens, right? Or how about short people like me? Well, how would you describe me? Working on a challenge. Yes, I'm short. It's okay to call me short. Louis says I'm working on a challenge. Thank you. Janitors, for example. What do we call them now? environmental engineers. Let's not get gender. We use these euphemisms to soften the edges of something that's unpleasant. Now, if we replace the word baby with the euphemism and call it a fetus or a mass of cells, if an unborn child could be seen just a little less than human, then somehow that makes it okay that we could just get rid of this baby and the guilt is not as strong. Do you see how there's a parallel? The problem is that this is only convenient some of the times. Just like back in the old days, the 3/5 slave person was convenient only some of the times. Let me give you an example. Say, for example, a woman wishes to abort her unborn baby at 5 months old. This is her decision. And the law in the United States says she has a right to a safe, legal abortion. That's her right. She can choose to do that. Done deal, bye-bye baby. So she gets in her car and she's driving to the clinic, right? Because she's made her decision and it's her right. A driver on his way to work, speeding, because it's raining and the road is wet and he's driving fast. And he runs through a stop sign. You can see his focus was, I need to get to work. He hits the lady who's pregnant, who's 5 months pregnant, on her way to the clinic. And she dies. And the baby dies. What happens? Bingo. This driver is charged with 2 counts of vehicular homicide. 1 count for the lady and 1 count for her baby. Because in the eyes of the law, only the mother has a right to take the child, the life of the unborn child. Do you see how there's such discrepancy in the way we operate because of expediency? So, what I call it is manipulation of the inconvenient truth. It's a truth that's only convenient when we want it to be convenient. The behavior of men back in the 1700s was ignoble. And today it's even more vile. Because we know better. We have the increased knowledge. We have increased technology. And we ought to do better. How many of you remember how we used to get milk back in the days when we were young and younger? How many of you remember? And don't say it, because I don't think you remember. Say what? How many of you, older people like me, remember how we used to get milk? Sometimes from our own backyard. How? I'll tell you how. If you had a cow in the backyard, you would go and get your own milk. If you didn't have a cow in your backyard, a farmer would deliver milk in a little glass bottle. Twice a week, 3 times a week, right? Do any of you remember that? Yes. Of course you do. I do remember that. I remember also my mom and my grandma steaming the milk to kill invisible unwanted pests that were lurking inside the cow's milk. Well, how did the pests get there? They were called bacteria. The same bacteria that caused serious infection in the womb, that was not properly disinfected with alcohol or hydrogen peroxide, which is what you guys, you young people, use now. But if you are from my generation, there was another thing that we used to use. Iodine, do you remember that? That would sting you from now till next year. How about Jetron Violet? Do you remember that one? Stained you for like 10 years. And how about mercurochrome? You remember that? Yes. Of course, these are the things we use to take the bacteria out. Just because we could not see the danger that lurked in our milk or in our wounds, doesn't mean the germs were not there. And they were deadly. If we did take care of them, we would kick the bucket. Right? With the invention of the microscope, scientists were better able to identify how they could see these things that eyes couldn't see and deal with them. This is similar in the way we view the unborn today. See, a few decades ago, a pregnant woman had very little connection with a tiny baby growing inside of her until the baby got so big that she could feel the flutters and the kicks and the rolls and the loop-de-loops. If you had a baby, you know how precious that feeling is. But before the baby started moving, a mother could not feel the connection. Does that mean the baby was not there? No. It just means we couldn't see and we couldn't feel, but the baby was still there. With the inventing of ultrasound, CT scans and MRI scans and all that stuff, a medical professional can look inside our bodies and see all kinds of stuff. This is what my son looked like in 1990 when I was pregnant with him. All he looked like was a big ball of fuzz curled up in he kind of looked like a worm, actually. Today, at the same point of pregnancy, you can get an image that looks like that. So no longer are we seeing a 2-degree photograph. We're using 3D images to see a baby at the age of 2 weeks, 3 weeks. This is amazing. We can also hear a baby's heartbeat. We can detect brain waves. We can take videos of a baby rolling around and check this one out. This is a baby who is inside of his mother, who had an issue, and the doctors were able to perform surgery without removing the baby from the mother's belly. How amazing is that? Put a little incision in the mommy's belly. Do the surgical thing. Sew the belly back up, and let the baby continue to bake for the rest of the 9 months. That's an amazing feat. We can do that. With these new medical discoveries, it is interesting though. What these things have done is they've removed the mystery and the veils that stood between a mother and the acknowledgement of the existence of her unborn baby. With medical technology, we can no longer deny the existent truth that an unborn child is fully human. With increase of knowledge, we can not only feel with our spirits, but we can see with our eyes the beauty of the creation of life, just as our Father intended. This life is precious, it's dignified, and sanctified from conception. I didn't make that up. Go to the next slide. This came straight out of the book of Jeremiah. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I sanctified you. I didn't make it up. Our goal at this time, this juncture, in the fight to protect the unborn, is not just to render abortion illegal. For if we're dependent on the law, it's nothing but legislature. We cannot legislate morality. Just because the law says it's okay, does not mean it's okay. 3/5 of a human being is not okay. Our work is to help women and men reach a place of spiritual empowerment where having an abortion, legal or illegal, is unthinkable. For the love that the woman feels for her unborn child supersedes everything else. It supersedes the inconvenience of having a baby. It supersedes the fear of raising a child. It supersedes the fear of the hurt and pain under which the baby was conceived. It supersedes everything because love conquers all. And when a woman does make the painful choice to take the life of her unborn child, as it has been done, it's not for us to judge. It's not for us to judge. There's a new movement. In fact, there was a book that was published by a woman, and I choose not to remember her name. She's so repugnant. But in this book, she has collected sayings from women who have had abortion, who are proud that they have had abortion. The movement is now called Shout Your Abortion, which is, to me, it's just such a contradiction. Because there's only one person I know who likes to celebrate death, and he's not God. How pained God must be when he hears these women declaring, in their vulgarity, we're not sorry we had an abortion. My abortion made me happy. These are some of the sayings. Happy? The scripture certainly has an opinion on this. Let's take a look at Jeremiah 8, verse 12. Were they ashamed when they had committed abomination? Nay, they were all not ashamed, neither could they blush. Therefore they shall fall among those who fall. In the time of their punishment, they shall be cast down, says the Lord. And he pick it up. Life does begin at conception. At the moment God conceives us, we're given life. Not only are we given life, but we're given everything that we need to take us from the day we're born all the way up to the day we die. At the moment of conception, God already knew that you were going to be a physician, an accountant, a pastor, an attorney. Just look in the classroom. You can pick out those students who are bossy. I'm looking at you. These are the students who are leaders, who take charge. God has imbued in them a gift. And if you look at some other students who are a little bit mousy, that's a gift too. Because a lot of them have a gift of compassion and encouragement. These are the quiet strengths. The one who don't waste their energy telling people what to do like weird does. God bless you. At the moment of conception, God has given you every talent that you need, every gift that you need to do what he has purposed you to do. For you formed me in my inward parts. You covered me in my mother's womb. I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and my soul knows very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret, and skillfully wrought in the lowest parts of the earth. Your eyes saw my substance, yet unformed. What a powerful, powerful reminder to us that we are not two atoms floating around that just coincidentally bumped into each other. We see the very evidence of how the baby in Elizabeth's womb, later called John the Baptist, how he leaped when he felt the presence of Jesus in Mary's tummy. How powerful and undeniable that two babies could recognize each other. You know, when I was pregnant with my first child, I had 3 sisters-in-laws who were pregnant at the same time. And I wonder if the babies were talking to each other. Maybe it's a spiritual thing, I don't know. But the Bible says it's possible. Life begins at conception, and it ends at natural death when God calls us home. In between these two defining moments, we, the ones who know better, we the Christians, must do everything in our power to preserve the sanctity of every single solitary life. As Christians, this means we must continue to speak out against the scourge of abortion. As Christians, we must continue to speak out against the indignities of racism, of sexism, of religious persecution, of debilitating poverty. We must speak out about incarceration. We must speak out about famine. We must speak out about homelessness and persecution. And in the classroom, we must speak out against bullying. It's our right to do because we know better. All life is sacred, bar none. Even the life of people who persecute us. For it is the same God who created all. This also means that we should not sit in a place of judgment against our brother or against our sister. But we should be ready at all times with open arms, a broad shoulder, and a tender heart to receive the broken in their time of weakness and in their need. Today, I particularly call on our men. I call on our men to step up and to take charge, to eradicate these atrocities, to take charge to rebuild our families and to restore marriages so that our nation can really, truly, fully heal. So today we stand in the middle of a poignant Memorial Weekend. And as we prepare for tomorrow, to sleep in, to stay a little bit longer, whether the sun rises or it rains, or it gets cold, 14 degrees out. Let us remember to take a few minutes to reflect on some powerful words of Dr. Martin Luther King. This is what he said. Read it with me. Morality cannot be legislated, but behavior can be regulated. Judicial decrees may not change the heart, but they can restrain the heartless. My prayer to you my sisters and my brothers, is that we would have the courage to stand and be counted as both the one who is morally sound, as well as the one who is legislatively accountable. This is our divine calling from God. It's called free will. We do have a choice. May God give us the strength and the courage to choose life. Thank you.